Hi, this is Rachel from the University of Toronto.
Hi, this is Justina from York University.
Animals are omnipresent in our lives in two main forms, as food and as our pets. Whereas in the West, it is a given that cats and dogs are pets and therefore cannot be food. This clear categorical divide does not apply to fish. There are two significant ambivalences in our relationship with fish. First, there's no absolute criteria for the distinction between what fish become food and what fish become pet. And two, the number of fish consumed as food so dwarfs the number kept as pets that it stands to reason that those people who keep one fish do not necessarily refrain from eating another. Fish kept as pets typically are visually pleasing to humans. They're nice to look at, and so they make a fine feature for animated film. Finding Nemo, from Disney and Pixar Studios, released in 2003, features a young clownfish and a very colorful cast of other ocean animals. The film's storyline makes the clear point that removing fish from their natural habitats is extremely traumatic, and it so urges the viewers to leave fish in the ocean. But this message did not hold sway with audiences. The sale of clownfish skyrocketed after the film's release. The appeal of owning one's own Nemo was too great to resist. In this talk, we investigate what makes the impulse to form an individual relationship to a pet fish so strong. We talk about the impact of this impulse for ocean health and climate more generally. We contend that animated film is an extremely important site of consideration when thinking about climate futures.
Dad! Daddy?
Finding Nemo tells the story of a juvenile clownfish captured by a diver to be an aquarium pet, and whose father travels the entire ocean to bring him home. Its recent sequel, Finding Dory, similarly deals with a lost fish on a quest for home and family. In charting their long journeys home to the reef, the films quite consciously and purposefully address the issue of ocean pollution in the form of plastics, overfishing, conservation, as well as rescue rehab programs. The films explicitly mock human behaviors toward animals done in the guise of kindness.
Hello, little fella.
Beauty, isn't he? I found that guy struggling for life out in the reef, and I saved him.
Dory, there you are! Look out!
Oh, look at this!
The takeaway message is that these misguided behaviors have traumatizing consequences for individual animals.
Fish aren't meant to be in a box, kid. It does things to you.
What's not shown is the devastating consequences of the aquarium fish trade for ocean habitats. So what is so overpowering about the drive to have a Nemo? The films present audiences with characters that are inescapably cute. Their large heads, their round expressive eyes drawn low on their faces, their full cheeks, and their rounded body makes them look babyish. And that's precisely the point. Disney and other manufacturers of cuteness have known for a long time that using this particular configuration of facial and bodily features makes characters look youthful, and therefore more lovable to audiences. Cute characters make us want to care for and protect them. This care response is an evolutionary adaptation. By creating characters whose bodies mimic the proportions of human babies, animators rely on the impulse to care for cute, defenseless infants. The impulse extends to an emotional response to these animal characters. Literary scholar Sianne Ngai argues that the cute is the dominant aesthetic of consumer society. The cute draws people in, and Disney specializes in the production of cute. Finding Nemo is an excellent example of how animals that are generally thought of as neither cute nor cuddly become absolutely irresistible when they're babyfied.
There are many cute, youthful characters in Finding Nemo, ranging from Pearl, the baby octopus, to Squirt, the baby sea turtle. But the focal point of cuteness in the film is Nemo himself. This is because, in addition to having the right body type to be a candidate for cuteness, Nemo's defenselessness is emphasized on many levels. Not only is he very young and naive, but he's lost his mother. She died in the first scene of the film. And he's been kidnapped from his home, meaning that he's out there in a tough world by himself without his father to protect him. The final element that solidifies Nemo's cute status is his disability. Nemo has a little fin, which is mentioned only in the context of his most vulnerable moments. Ngai makes the point that cute things become even cuter when perceived as injured or disabled, because they become even more powerless. This is where the sadistic side of cute comes in. As Ngai explains, cuteness is grounded in ambivalent or even explicitly contradictory feelings. Cuteness, in other words, is about aestheticizing powerlessness.
Most people encounter ocean life only on the Nature Channel or on their plate. So in contrast to animals like dogs and cats, that many of us have intense personal relationships with, ocean fauna remains a distant abstraction. Very few of us have the chance to develop relationships with fish as individuals with distinct personalities. And this is part of what we think made Finding Nemo so successful. This film took an ecosystem that is still very much abstract and foreign to us. 70% of the Earth's surface is ocean, but 95% of it remains unexplored. The ocean is presented to audience in a way that makes it seem friendly and familiar, allowing us to develop personal relationships with each of its quirky characters. Oceans are fundamentally unknown and unknowable, places in which strange, still undiscovered species live. They are vulnerable to habitat destruction, ocean warming, and various other ecosystemic disruptions caused by anthropogenic climate change. We all know this in theory, but the immediate effects of these changes on the ocean are invisible to us. In the films, the ocean is full of excitement and complex social interactions. It is also full of threats that its residents understand very well, since it is their home. Nemo's coral reef is presented to us as a vibrant community. Predator animals, including humans, are presented as largely being out there beyond the reef, a place where the fish know better than to go, and a place where Nemo's father shows Odyssean courage in his often challenged navigation. In fact, we don't see human presence on the reef at all in the film. Humans only intervene where the fish understand themselves as out of place. The reef is cast as a pristine playground, hidden deep within the great unknown. The fact that pet Nemos come from such magical, abstract, foreign places adds another layer to what makes them so appealing as pets.
Cultural geographer Tuan has argued that humans oppress and do violence to the very beings for which they claim the most fondness. Tuan argues that a driving force in framing logic behind making animals into pets comes from a long Western history of romanticizing freedom and play. Tuan argues that human playscapes, that's my word, not his, manifest a dangerous, violent type of imagination. This is an imagination unfettered by morals, accepted unquestioningly as benevolent, and ultimately part of a lie that we tell ourselves about our own human goodness. As a pristine and untouched landscape, the reef would seem to invite the type of engagement of which Tuan is so critical.
Today's the day! Our field trip to the stingray migration.
Stingray migration.
What must be stressed here is that the reef is presented as fun, and this is where the desire for humans to control and dominate thrives. In places of whimsy, of fancy, and of pleasure, where human actions are not only unchecked, but are also understood as naturally good.
Since Finding Nemo came out in 2003, sales of clownfish for aquarium use have skyrocketed globally, with the US being the largest market. Clownfish have long been a popular aquarium fish, but statistics show that following the release of the film, sales tripled. This is no coincidence, and this trend of mass purchases of animals after they appear in a film has been happening for almost a century. After 101 Dalmatians was released, everyone wanted a Dalmatian, generating a huge demand for the breed overnight. But already the following year, animal shelters around the US reported a sharp increase in the number of unwanted Dalmatians. It happened to pigs too after the release of Babe, to rats after the release of Ratatouille, to Red Ear Sliders after Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and even to owls after their minor role in the Harry Potter series. The pattern is clear. When people see a cute animal in a movie that they like, they want to own one, generating a huge spike in demand, followed by an increase in the number of abandoned animals in the following years. So we know that films have a huge impact on human behavior. The problem is that this impact is often very negative. Finding Nemo was clearly about the importance of leaving fish on the reef where they belong, but somehow this important message got lost and was overtaken by the more powerful urge to own a Nemo, to protect and take care of this animal that audiences worldwide have just realized is very cute. And this is exactly why many animal welfare organizations were very concerned when Pixar announced Finding Dory. Dory is a blue tangfish, a species that is very susceptible to a variety of illnesses and does not fare well in captive life. The World Wildlife Fund and the Royal Zoological Society have recorded a 50% decline in marine life populations over the past 50 years. But fish continue to be caught in huge numbers every year to meet market demand. This destabilizes entire ecosystems. Up to 30 million fish are taken out of the ocean each year to serve as aquarium pets, but over 90% of them die before they actually make it to an aquarium. This is because the methods used to collect fish are extremely wasteful and damaging to ocean life. In many countries, fish collectors use chemicals like cyanide and quinidine to temporarily stun the fish so that they're easier to catch. They do this by simply pouring the chemicals directly into the water near the reef. Sometimes coral are broken off to expose fish that were taking refuge. And of the stunned fish, only about 10% are collected. The rest are left to die. Other species of fish that weren't being targeted, as well as shrimp and crabs, often die in the process as well, and the coral themselves are systematically being exposed to these chemicals.
Coral are a keystone species. Entire ecosystems rely on them for survival. They sustain more than a quarter of all marine species, but are very sensitive to various environmental stresses, like those that are produced by current practices in aquarium fish collection. Very few people realize that about 95% of aquarium pets are actually wild captured. The continuing growth of this industry, coupled with the fact that these hugely damaging collection methods continue to be used, has devastating consequences. In addition to the consequences that Justine has argued, the films also had one, perhaps even stranger consequence. After having watched Finding Nemo, many people who already owned a clownfish felt so bad that they released their pet into the wild. Given as how the film shows a fish's escape from aquarium to ocean as possible and ideal, it is not wholly unreasonable that these people believed that they were doing the right thing. And in many places, dumped aquarium pets like goldfish and snails are becoming an invasive species, seriously disrupting local ecosystems. In fact, globally, the aquarium trade has contributed a third of the world's worst aquatic invasive species.
So to recap, we know that Finding Nemo affected public responses in regard to aquarium fish, because studies conducted after 2003 show that their popularity as aquarium pets soared, and correspondingly, their populations on coral reefs in the ocean declined. We also know that the methods currently being used to capture aquarium fish are not only deadly for many fish species, but also for coral reefs themselves. And we need coral reefs. A lot of climate change rhetoric centers around saving trees and saving the Amazon or the rainforest, but there is surprisingly little mention of saving our oceans. Oceans produce far more oxygen than all of the world's rainforests combined, about 80% of our oxygen in fact. Oceans also absorb a whole lot more CO2 than trees, which reduces the impact of climate change, and coral reefs play an important part in keeping carbon levels in check. When we think of a coral reef, we're actually thinking of two organisms living symbiotically, the coral polyp and a kind of algae called zooxanthellae that lives inside the coral and gives it that bright color. The coral provides algae with carbon dioxide that the algae uses for photosynthesis. The algae takes that carbon dioxide and releases oxygen and other compounds. The coral then uses these compounds to create limestone, which is what the actual reef skeleton is made of.
John Berger argued that gradual processes of industrialization and urbanization removed what he called real animals from Western lives. Berger believed that this removal constituted a deeply felt human void, and humans in the West have since scrambled to improvise new animal encounters which have made co-opted animals. Co-opted animals are those that have been absorbed into systems of human signification. What is lost in this process of co-opting is now what people are hungry for, and that's intimacy. This is the paradox for the spectator of co-opted animals. They seek to view this object, the animal, or in this case, the aquarium fish, in search of a personal connection. Yet their spectatorship is a form of ownership and oppression to the object of their viewing. This objectification reinforces their distance. In the modern West, though, there is no belief in a primordial kinship with marine worlds. The viewer's encounter with the ocean world on film is not an experience of alienation from a once-known land or sea or world of possibility. Humans have never lived underwater. When we set our gaze to sea life on film, we are already trained and socialized to understand what we see as an object by way of its distance from us. There's no illusion of false intimacy. The ocean on screen is as separate to us as the ocean out there in the world. If the ocean is so abstract to the human in real life, one might argue that its representation would bring the viewer closer and help them to better know the animals featured in ocean films. But in fact, it's quite the opposite. It's our view that oceans in animated film produce a second order of abstraction that actually escalates the longing discussed by Berger and exponentializes its consequences. Whereas Berger was focused on the live exchange of the zoo, Jonathan Burt looked specifically at film, that second order of distance that I just spoke about. Burt argues that animal history has been characterized by two disappearances. First by extinction, and then by their effacement. It was film, Burt argues, that played a vital role in the latter, more recent disappearance. Film made animals into metaphors. Co-opted animals, as Berger might call them, or containers for a human fantasy of human freedom and pleasure, as Tuan might say. What we may be looking at now is this effacement bringing extinction back. What the consequences of clownfish purchase tell us is that film plays a part of this new erasing life on Earth. The ways in which animals have been effaced in their representation has produced a human response that is now driving their extermination.
In the West, it is very easy not to see the effects of climate change. Our dirty industries are abroad, our waste is washed away to distant shores, and the pollution of our oceans is invisible. Our worlds are organized in such a way that things are hidden, and we like it that way. Climate change is a product of this distance. And the things that seem harmless and that may even reassure us of our caring are huge contributors to the ecological catastrophe with which we're faced. Caring about climate futures requires critically rethinking what it means to care. It requires a type of caring that is removed from our immediate experience of the world. It's a type of caring based in imagination and in an ethic of responsibility that does not demand personal relationship as proof. And films can inspire us to this type of care. This is what makes film great. Films allow us to imagine what life may be like in different places and for creatures we will never know. We use film to escape, and what nastier present reality is there to want to escape from than climate change? But this is not permission to confuse escape with denial, and it's not permission to confuse fun with complicity. The case of Finding Nemo is one of many that could be used to help us rethink how what we see shapes what we do, and how what we do matters. Thank you.